Hey, what's up everybody? Welcome back to another great video about argumentation. Oh yeah. Hey, what's up? Welcome from the Montclair State University campus. It is I, live in New Jersey, Dr. Steve Allen. Hey folks, I hope you're having a fantastic day out there, whatever it is you're doing. Whatever you enjoy, good golf, good tennis, whatever's making you happy out there, I hope you are having a fantastic time. Ph.D. I am not really on the campus. I'm in New York, but I do like these creepy guys. Have you ever seen these creepy guys? One of them looks a lot like Joe Biden. Yeah, I noticed that. A student of mine pointed that out to me last semester. But I enjoyed walking by them. I took a lot of selfies with them because I'm a little bit weird and obsessed like that. But I think that they're like one of the coolest things that the campus in New Jersey has to offer. But I understand some of you might be in the Los Angeles campus. I hope you're having a good time out there in La La Land. West Coast, Best Coast, and all that. Bless up. Blessed Coast, maybe. Hashtag Blessed Coast. Anyway, this video is a little bit different than some of the other videos that you've seen that I've put up. They're more like direct instruction about things about debate, and there's going to be much more of that. We have a lot to do before we can have our fun debates, our in-class debates, which I think are going to work out exceedingly well using Canvas and Discord. We'll figure out a balance. I want to make it easy for you to get the grade that you want. That's my goal here, and I also want you to learn. If I make it easy for you to get the grade you want in the class, that means you're going to learn something out of it, right? Right?
Oh.
I think that's what it means. Hopefully you'll learn what I'd like you to learn. But one of the things that's been bothering me is I think I'm a little bit too debate heavy in the class. The class is called Argumentation and Debate, and we have not spoken about the relationship between those things. So what I'm going to talk to you about today is covered pretty much in the Tyndale book in chapter 1. Now, the Tyndale book is available through the Montclair State University Library System. Give it up for the University Library. Yes, that's right. University Library, we absolutely love it. It's fantastic, and this way you don't have to buy a textbook. So I think that's a really good reason to give it up for them. You can get that on the link. You can download chapter by chapter, I think, or you could just read it on the web browser of your choice. This is all going to be chapter 1 stuff, but I'm going to take you through the ways that people have thought about argumentation, because I don't know if you've thought about it that deeply before. We all kind of know when we're in an argument, yeah? We kind of get a sense of when we're in an argument. We know that we're arguing. Or when someone presents us with something, we know it's an argument. We get a newspaper editorial. Well, that's kind of like dating myself there. Newspaper editorial, what the hell? You watch a video on TikTok, you know whether it's funny, you know whether someone's making an argument. Like political talk, for example. Or you're reading something online, you're like, oh, I understand. Yeah, this is a good argument. It just kind of comes to us naturally. So scholars for a very long time have tried to work on this term argument to try to figure out what argumentation is and how to best understand it theoretically. And they've gone back and forth. The thing to know as we start is for the majority of human history, argument has been thought of as what we call a normative theory, which means people interested in it made theories about how they thought people should be arguing. Since World War II and the rise of propaganda studies and the horrible things the Nazis did to the world, the impetus has been more on descriptive argument theory than a normative theory that comes from that. So we want to see how people do this without a lot of training. What are the natural things people do when they're trying to have an argument? And then how does that lead to a normative theory, a prescriptive theory to where scholars can say, you're doing it wrong, do it like this. In the past, it was kind of like, this is the way to do it that's pure, rather than this is the way to do it that is based on the way human beings in society interact with each other, the way the human physiology and mind works is the basis for argumentation. So let's do a little mind mapping together today. Now, I'll warn you, I've tried to shoot this video like probably 2 or 3 times today. It's freaking annoying. I'm learning this new software called Miro. I think it's a beautiful thing. I learned it from a buddy of mine, and he was using it, and I think it's just the coolest thing in the world. So let's play around with it. Let's try to get some relationships to argumentation down here. So the very first one, the more obvious one that we should look at, I think, is this idea of debate. right? Debate. What is the relationship, do you think, between argumentation and debate? What is that relationship? Lots of relationships are possible. You could say this. They're equal, right? We could do that. We could also say that the relationship is an estimated, like equivalent. Do you remember this? I don't want to traumatize you with math or give you PTSD from your math class, but it could be like almost equivalent, close enough, kind of like an estimate kind of thing. But that might not be good. Some people do this. They would say, argumentation is superior. It's greater than debate. But what a weird relationship to think about. Because I think maybe a lot of you are thinking there, you're thinking about the equals theory or something. You're like, how could it be better? How could it be better? Maybe it's not better. Maybe it's just bigger. Greater than can mean bigger. It just might mean bigger in terms of size of what it covers, because debate might be the smaller of the two. You never know. But there is a relationship here. We're just not sure what it is. I can tell you this. I think the relationship does have a term that sits a little bit above it, and that's the term discourse. Now, I don't know if you've heard the term discourse before. It's a very popular philosophical term. Discourse is often used in philosophy to talk about the things. Oh, crap. What happened? To talk about the things that ground our ability to speak. So discourse is usually defined in English as speech. It comes to us from French theory. But discourse could also mean everything that makes speech meaningful and how speech makes things meaningful. It's almost circular, the way meaning is formed in these kind of anti-structuralist or post-structuralist, as sometimes it's called, theories about meaning. So discourse is that soup of meanings and utterances that allows you to take shape as a subject in order to say something meaningful. So discourse is literally all utterances, everything that can be said, all of that, and the ideological and structural foundations in society that give speech meaning. So both of these things stem. It stems from discourse. Okay, I'm already screwing up. Let's do this. So think about it like that. Both of them stem from discourse. Some people would say that argumentation and debate have a relationship, that argumentation appears in debate, but not all debates are arguments. So I'm not sure how we would make that relationship. Maybe we make an arrow like this. Arguments appear in debate, but not all debates are arguments. Now we'll table debate for a bit, because I think I can talk about debate a lot more in future videos, but think about this relationship. This means argumentation is a part of a larger speech pattern, so we could choose to be an argument or not. Or as some scholars have said, we can use argumentation as a perspective and put it on something and try to make it make sense. So for example, you might have watched the Kamala Harris-Donald Trump presidential debate. You might say, how is that a debate at all? Were they making arguments? And if you took the argumentative perspective, you might be somewhat disappointed, because what is the argumentative perspective? What would that help us understand about these two candidates and who to support? You might have thought, well, it was pretty horrible. I don't know what we could say about it. But maybe you could take the perspective and say it wasn't argument at all. Then maybe you could say something more constructive about it. So argumentation as a perspective frees you up to name the discourse in powerful ways. But how is argumentation studied? Well, there's about 4 different major schools in the world when we think about argumentation, and I wonder if I can, oops, I don't want to do that. Let's just do like this. There are 4. And we'll move debate over here for now. Why does it keep doing that? I don't understand. I feel like maybe I'm like not using the correct browser or something. It could be it. Or it could just be that I'm incompetent at this computer stuff. I don't know. Maybe you might think I'm pretty good at the computer stuff. I hope you do. Toasty! I really like doing the online teaching. I like making videos and stuff. It makes me very happy. So let's talk about these four major approaches to argumentation. The first is what we call the American school or rhetoric. What is rhetoric? I'm a professor of rhetoric. So what does it mean to study rhetoric? Rhetoric is the study of meaning making and the disputes that occur when people think meaning has been made incorrectly. That can come out in a couple of different ways. One, people misunderstand things. Two, they're not as motivated as they possibly could be about something. So if I gave a rhetorically inept speech, people would not be motivated to take action or change in some way. So the rhetoric of that speech would be failing. Another way to think about rhetoric is appropriateness. What's inappropriate or appropriate? And we judge people based on whether they perform appropriately based on social conventions and norms. And that's also the study of rhetoric too. It's like, how do you make meaning? Oh, they were so late, they can't be trusted. Okay, I made a meaning about that person. I've talked about an attitude from that person. And looking at argumentation this way means that argumentation is this very fungible, very fluid material where audience, they co-create. They're like co-conspirators of the meaning of that argument. They come together and they kind of make it co-conspiratorially, right? Does that make sense? I hope that makes sense. So this is primarily what we would call the American school. Now, there are Canadians and others who aren't necessarily American, but the tradition of rhetoric comes out of America, out of the United States, where because we have what's called, I'm sure you've heard people say this before, the experiment in mass literacy and mass education and democracy and mass literacy, came with it the need for mass education, which came with writing and speech instruction, which is the art of rhetoric, which is how do I get people to say things that will make people change their mind or think about things differently or have a new meaning about something. And that's the tradition there. And that tradition of studying argumentation comes from this idea that as you make the argument, your view changes as you hear yourself. But as you get feedback from the audience, the argument changes too. And the audience's presence changes the argument too. So argument can't possibly be a hard, extant thing that we draw from. We take it and we hand to the audience. It's co-created through a situational approach and a situational logic. School number 2. I think I'm going to have to zoom around quite a bit on this. I don't know why I have to change these things all the time. But let's change the color. Let's make it red. Yeah, because we're going to talk about... Actually, I should have made this one blue, huh? Because it's the American school. Yeah, American school. Yeah, we're going to run out of colors pretty soon. Let's talk about informal logic, often known as the Canadian school. This is practiced by philosophers in Canada, mostly at the University of Windsor. And what this is the study of fallacies and the study of how to adapt rigorous logic to everyday argument. That's what they are studying. So you might look at the American school and say, oh, there's some equivalency here. There's some connection here. You know, I see some nice connection there. It depends on who you're talking to in terms of, that connection. Some people would say, well, yeah, there is. And some people would say no. Some American rhetorics say, well, they're a little bit behind because they're too invested in the formal structure of argumentation. So now I realize we kind of have to back up a little bit. And we need to talk about argumentation prior to World War II. How was argumentation seen prior to World War II? How was it talked about? How was it seen? Well, there's, differences here, but painting with a broad brush, we could say that it was seen as normative. And if you remember earlier, I was talking to you about how the normative theory is how to do it. And it was based on formality, where argumentation was seen as a structure with rules. And the violations of those rules were determined to be bad arguments. The two most important terms to know about this part of argumentation history is validity and soundness. An argument has to be valid. The conclusions must follow from the assumptions, from the principles. They have to follow in a certain rules-based way, almost like mathematics. And soundness, there has to be quality evidence and enough of it to support the point. If you agree to it, you shouldn't ever agree to an argument that's invalid. And you should never agree to an argument that's unsound. And this is the way it was prior to that. This is a philosophical bit of business, and the philosophical parts of this kind of come out into the way philosophers see argumentation today. And a lot of that trickles down into the Canadian school. There's a lot of it in there. But the Canadian school understands that structural problems with arguments, often known as the fallacies. You've probably heard of the fallacies. Have you guys ever been on Reddit? If you have, you know what a fallacy is, because there are fallacy warrior, like edgelords on there all day. And TikTok, there are all these lawyers who think they're good at arguing, who are on TikTok telling you how to argue and not to accept things. They are basing it based on the idea that argumentation is a structural thing. Fallacies only make sense if you accept that arguments are structural. In the American school, fallacies don't have a lot of meaning because argument is so fungible. That is, it's a swirling eddy, a mass of different kinds of ideas and different relationships. It's situational. In the Canadian school, it's a little bit stricter. They're like, well, they don't want to abandon this structural model 100%, but they want to adapt it and say, well, the structural model should be able to bend like a tree in the wind. Or you know how when you're in a tall skyscraper and it kind of moves based on the wind? Or how in earthquake-prone parts of the world, they build buildings that can sway, that can move, and that allows them to kind of stay firm. If you make it very rigid, it's going to fall over if the ground moves. And that's what they recognize in the Canadian school. It's called informal logic because they want people to apply logical principles, but situationally, in order not to get tricked or duped or manipulated. And that's what they study there in that approach to argumentation. Now, what's our third school? The Dutch school, University of Amsterdam. Lovely place. I've been there many times. I've been fortunate to be there many times. Actually, they should be orange, right? Right? House of Orange. Yeah, this looks orange. Good enough, right? Like House of Orange, you know? Where are my Dutch people at? There we go. Good. We love it. So the Dutch school, they came up with a philosophy called pragmadialectics. What is that? Well, it's a mix between pragmatism, which is the American philosophy of being of sort of not dealing in the ideal so much, but dealing with what you have in front of you, dealing with what's there. And dialectics, which is the exchange, a dialectical exchange. Dialectics is like formal philosophy's model of conversation. Dialecticians are people who follow the tradition of Plato and Socrates, this kind of Socratic method, not necessarily the Analectus, which is the law school method of questioning, always questioning and asking continuous questions, which is law school pedagogy has been, at least in the United States for a long time, this rigorous questioning and never really telling you you're wrong, but questioning you until you contradict yourself, which is what Socrates is famous for doing in the Platonic dialogues. But dialectics is a little bit more formal than that. They want to combine the best of both worlds. They want something that's applicable to the situations we find ourselves in, but has the rigor and the authority of an ideal. So pragmadialectics has the ideal of critical discussion. Just like in formal logic, the Canadian school, their idea is like, let's bring logic and make it flexible and wiggly. They're like, let's create our entire system of how to resolve differences of opinion. That's really what they say that they're doing, is that's the entire point and purpose of the Dutch school, is to, these marks don't travel with the thing. Oh, I don't want to create any confusion, so we'll just delete those. I thought that they would stick around. I think I might have to make a line there just to show that there might be a connection. Oh, I can change the type. Let's see. What can I can put question, 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 question. Oh, that's good. Oh, that's really good. Oh, I like that. So there could be a connection there, but they usually do not see themselves as very connected. So the Dutch school is like, we like the idea of logic. We like that formality, but we're going to create our own thing to resolve difference of opinion. What does it mean? It doesn't mean that everybody agrees. It means the difference of opinion is resolved, which means we can move on. We can move to another topic now. We understand each other. It can mean a number of things, but it does not mean that everybody agrees. Usually what it means is we can move on to another layer or another element, because most of the time when we're arguing, we're unclear about what we actually disagree on. And when we engage in formal argumentative practice, as the Dutch would say, we actually learn that we're not in disagreement, or that our disagreement lives elsewhere, or we're just confused about what the hell we're talking about. You've had this happen to you, haven't you? Have you ever been in an argument with somebody and then you're like, what were we talking about? What do we even disagree about? What the hell are we doing? It's this weird kind of thing, like, oh, and you kind of feel awkward. That's kind of what they're talking about. They think it goes like that. So critical discussion has 10 steps to it in pragma dialectics, and if you violate the steps, you commit a fallacy. So there's where the structural evidence comes in. What they want is an ideal, a measure, a meter. A meter is an ideal unit of measure, right? There's no such thing as a meter other than what we've created. So a lot of people would say, well, it's an ideal. They say, yeah, it is an ideal. We can't really reach the perfect critical discussion. We can just get the rules very close, but without an ideal, you don't really know how to build anything. And it's kind of true. Like without a meter stick, how would we make a bridge? How would we make a highway or anything like that? We need to have this ideal of measure to be able to make concrete things. And that's kind of how they defend what they do in the Dutch school. Pragma dialectics. All right. Last, but certainly not least, the Japanese Debate Association. And I guess we can make them red too. I don't know what we'll make them. I'll make them this nice color. I'm not sure what you might think about that, but let's make them this color. The JDA teaches people how to debate. So it's usually a study of teaching and learning, the pedagogy of debating. Now, why would that matter? Why would that be important? For civic capacity. So the study of argumentation there and the study of debate there is always about increasing civic capacity and helping people become better at it. The Dutch school probably would agree with that goal, but they're not terribly interested in that. They want to kind of purify the theory. The Canadian school isn't terribly interested in debate at all. What they're interested in is having logical tools be more accessible and more robust in real-world situations. The American school is the most connected to the Japanese school, but a lot of American rhetoricians who study argument are, they're kind of dilettantish. They're talking about stuff in critical theory and all kinds of weird theories that take them away from the pragmatics, the pragmatic approach that you would find in what you would find in a traditional kind of rhetoric classroom of helping people speak and write better and more effectively, whatever that means, or reaching audiences. Oh my God, why is it doing this? If you know why it's doing that, can you leave a comment? Because I really hate it. I'm going to refresh. Really, 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 really hate that. Really, 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 really hate it. Okay. I might do that later. So in the JDA, they have all these different studies of like how to teach people how to debate, and they're very focused on students and that kind of thing. They're also focused on the history of how debate was practiced in society. There's so much good JDA research on the history of Japanese debating. And then there's also exchanges they do with the United States, debate exchanges, which I've had the fortune of going on, and maybe I'll share a video from that. If I can find one, I have them out there. But those are the four major approaches to argumentation. Also thinking about argumentation, besides these four major scholarly schools, is we cannot be remiss to mention that people studying artificial intelligence, like things like Project Debater, I don't know if you've heard of that, or things like large language models, like Sam Altman and people like that are doing these kind of strange interests a strange kind of interest in argumentation, because their idea is that, well, if we were to create a software program, or if we were to create a robot, let's say, that could have a sustained argument with a person and last as long as the person without sounding weird or sounding fake or hallucinating, then we would have the perfect artificial intelligence. This idea actually stems from, but is not related to, some of the interesting stuff going on in evolutionary psychology and cognitive psychologists and evolutionary psychologists who sort of think about argumentation and work with it have been telling us that argumentation is part of our evolutionary heritage. Communication is part of our heritage, not reason, not logic, but we like to argue. That's how we figure out the world together, and that's how humans have been so successful, is through this communication strategy and communication practice that has us arguing with each other a lot. Argumentation is very productive and a good thing to have. When they talk about that, they're changing our view of things like confirmation bias, which in most literature now is called my-side bias, because this has become much more accepted across other disciplines. There's still some people who really aren't caught up yet, who are thinking about confirmation bias. Why won't this move? Does anybody know? I want this to move. Can I break the connection? Will that help? Yeah, I don't know. I think it's just going to sit there. Maybe if I move that. Okay, if I move that, it'll move. Okay. So confirmation bias is the idea that anytime you encounter information, you always judge it by the story or the narrative of the world that you have currently. So if you believe certain things about climate change and you encounter information that pushes back against that, or certain information about who votes for Trump, you're automatically going to push against it, even if that information is good. And that's a normal way of human thinking. We tend to, in the old model, that old pre-World War II model that we talked about over here, if we think about argumentation as normative structural rules that people need to learn, then confirmation bias is a problem, because they don't put validity and soundness over the quality and the ability of their own story to fold together and to be together. If they don't do that, then they're in trouble. But over here with the cognitive scientists and the, oh my God, getting frustrated. I thought I had a good new tool here, folks, but it's refreshing on me too much. Too annoying. I hope I'm not giving you a seizure with all this flashing. Anyway, if we, Jesus, man. Boo. Okay, come on. Why is it doing this? Okay, over here in the evolutionary psychology part of the, yeah, I won't even move an inch now. What the hell, man? Come on. Come on. Okay, so over here, if they're saying this is part of our normal, I just wish I could put it on the screen for just 1 second. Please, Miro, please. Okay, well, over here, in this part of the graph that I can't seem to zoom in on anymore. Yeah, it's kind of done. Anyway, the lecture is pretty much over, but over here they're saying this is a natural feature. Confirmation bias is a natural feature of human thought, and as such is one that, why won't it even work any? It's just stopped working. Well, you think you have a good tool and then it stops working. Anyway, the over here, this idea becomes natural. So if confirmation bias is a natural part of human reasoning, you can't just teach it away if it's a part of the way our brains work. So that's a big debate and a big push that's happening now in the study of argumentation. So a little word, lots of connections, lots of different ways of looking at it. I hope this has been helpful for getting you to think about what you might think argumentation is and what its relationship is to debate. More debate videos to come. Good luck on the topic papers, but Ask yourself, what do you think an argument is? How would we best understand it? And what is a normative theory of argument meant to do? Is it meant to help us communicate better? Is it meant to get us to resolve differences of opinion? Is it meant to help us all agree and get the facts? What is it that we might be using that theory for? See if you can come up with your own. Leave your own ideas about argument in the comments. I would love to read them, or put them on Discord. This video will appear on Canvas, and it will appear also on Discord. You can leave comments in both places. Love to hear your thoughts on this talk about how argument has been understood. See you next time. Good luck on the topic papers, and I will see you guys in the next video. Peace.